Hello, Rebel fans. All right, Rebel fans. Hello, everybody. Nice to talk to you tonight. I guess I didn't really do an intro like I usually do with the music and the. I guess I can do that real quick. Well, UNLV fan, UNLV falls to New Mexico at home, a crushing defeat. I mean, obviously New Mexico's a good team, but it feels like the worst defeat of the year as UNLV falls 89-61. Let's break it down. This is the Let's Run podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to the show today. I don't really know how many people we're going to get on the live stream today, but those of you that are here, I know that you're diehards, just like me. I'm not going to let one bad loss, even though we've had several. I don't let any bad loss or even any collection of losses deter me from my love of the Running Rebels and of UNLV sports and of the community that I've had a part in helping build up here. Still love the Rebels. I still support the team and hope the best for them. But this was really bad as UNLV falls 89-61 to the New Mexico Lobos. Now it should be said, guys, New Mexico's really good. Like this was not, it felt a lot like the 2023-2024 season Air Force loss where UNLV lost by like 30 points at home to Air Force. When UNLV was a really good team that year, a better team than this year's team for sure. Um, but this was not that. I mean, it was New Mexico's really good. Now the Rebels looked absolutely hapless in this game. They really struggled at every facet. And despite the fact that I've seen some really tough games, this one, for whatever reason, felt especially tough. Um, and it's really tough. So let's go through some comments here. What a game from Finzix. Yeah, what a game. Wow. RGX Factor Rebel. Good to see you, brother. The streak lives. Sarcasm. Yeah, the streak. It was really telling. I guess the point of the game that we were all laughing about. Where I was sitting with my parents. Is that after Al Green made that three to extend the streak, about 30% of the Thomas and Mack stood up and left. So many of the Rebel fans that had remained behind to make sure that we hit the 3-pointer got up and left. It was about as bad as I can remember. Super painful to watch. I totally agree. Vegas guitars. TBH, I am shocked. I'm not a crash out Karen mode on X like I normally get sometimes. IDK if that's me maturing as a person or becoming numb. It's definitely you becoming numb. Normally, I notice that all when it comes to running Rebel teams, I'll generally with their first loss, I'll get pretty mad, but I won't crash out super hard, even if it's a really bad loss. It's usually the second or the third bad loss on the season that anger me the most. Um, and then after that, you start to not feel quite as much pain after each successive loss. So that's kind of where I think we're at now. Tavon says it's the love I have for that makes this hurt so much. Oh yeah, I mean, I may not be crash out, screaming, angry, upset, but I'm certainly in a lot of pain as a Rebel fan tonight, and I think a lot of Rebel fans are, especially because there's just something about your own college basketball team that no other sport can give you. No NFL, no college football, even. There's something about having your team and seeing them struggle like this was really, really, really sad. This year about to be a bad hire from Timothy. I'll get into that a bit more later about Coach Passner, but I look, I'll get into that more later. I obviously didn't like the Passner hire. I still don't like the Passner hire, but he's our coach. So what can you do? Timothy says, but man, he has destroyed UNLV basketball considering that they have history and the tradition that they have. Yeah, I think that in a lot of ways, the UNLV history and tradition has become, as more time has gone by, so much of I don't want to call it an anchor because it's better to have history than not have history, but failing to live up to that history for so long has created just a frustration with the fan base, and with the people of the locals of Las Vegas, that people just don't want to care because they just feel disappointed by UNLV basketball. So really frustrating. Harper could have paid Olin what we have been paying coaches the last couple of cycles, knowing that he was a better coach than Passner, but he chose the guy who would take less than half of what Olin wanted and then ignore the basketball program. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit more. I'll talk about the process that went into hiring Coach Passner, specifically as related to Coach Eric Olin, who is just a Coach Eric Olin, and New Mexico is dang good, and they're good not because they have crazy talent. I mean, I look at some of those guys on the New Mexico roster, and they're not as talented as some of the players that UNLV has, but they're so well coached. They're on a string. Their defense is impeccable. They play together. And really, Eric Olin, if he was the coach of the Runnin' Rebels, we would be, I don't know that we'd be a bubble team like New Mexico is right now. That's kind of hard to say, especially with our schedule, but we'd be better off than we are under Coach Passner. I'll get into the hiring process here in just a minute. I want to make sure I get your guys' comments. At least the streak lives. Pretty much everyone in my row was cheering for it. Yeah, I was cheering for it too, Tristan. Tommy Gunn, 80. Eric Harper sure doesn't know how to hire any good coaches besides football. And to be fair, as an athletic director, um, UNLV has made a decision that Eric Harper's job is going to be judged by how good the football program is, not necessarily by how good the basketball program is. Eric Harper, his focus and attention is on the football field. It's not, in my view, on the basketball court. He wants basketball to be good, but he wants basketball to be a thing that he doesn't have to think about, so that he can focus his attention and efforts on the football field. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the wrong approach. I mean, it is the wrong approach in a sense that we have a historic basketball program and we need to be a lot better than this. But I do not believe that Eric Harper is in on basketball. I don't think he's the type of. I just and there are several things that we'll get into in just a moment that are reasons why. Well, UNLV will probably win tomorrow against New Mexico in the pit on the women's side. Yeah, that's probably true. Our women's team is really good. X Factor just saying hello, hi on YouTube. Hello, I have you open on two browsers, X and YouTube. That gives me another viewer, so I appreciate that. Sin City Sports, nice to see Al Green score a couple of buckets. Yeah, if you want to take away a couple of positives, I mean, there's nothing positive about this game, but I think that Al Green and Nas Cunningham I feel like they have to be part of the rotation a little bit here. Um, and I think Passner maybe has to allow specifically Nas Cunningham. He's just too talented. This team has a talent deficit because of the injuries. They have a talent deficit at too many positions for a guy as talented as Nas Cunningham to be sitting on the bench. And so seeing him play a little bit, obviously it was garbage time. So you take what Nas Cunningham did with a grain of salt, but seeing him play a little bit was certainly nice. Nick says, I've never left early for a basketball game. I left with 7 minutes to go. Just sad, man. Totally disappointed and bummed. Yeah, I think you want to know something crazy. I mean, a week ago today, we were sitting here in this exact seat celebrating UNLV winning in Logan, the toughest place to play in the Mountain West Conference, probably. Beating maybe the best team at least at that time in the Mountain West Conference on the road. A week later, we have 2 home losses, and it's 1 week. 1 week ago, we were celebrating the Utah State win, and look where we are now. It's crazy how fast your fortunes can turn around in in college basketball. Play better as a team, so undisciplined. I agree. A+ win versus Maryland. It's fair to say Jacob Benarbi is the worst basketball player ever. Yeah, I really liked Jacob at the beginning of the year, and I have not liked him as a player since really since he got hurt after that Memphis game. I don't know if he's dealing with injuries, but I just don't think Jacob is a positive player. Cunningham is too talented not to play over Walter Brown. I don't really hate the Walter Brown minutes either. I don't think anybody should have guaranteed minutes on this roster, and I think that will probably be Passner's approach. But I think Passner's trying to do too much all the time, and I think I don't think that Passner is. I don't think he's okay. I guess I'll get into it. Let me make sure I get the rest of your guys' comments. Nah should be playing every night. I don't care if he's on a slump. He's one of the most talented players on the team. We're very able. I agree with that. In my opinion, you do that. The gains are more than the losses, including a salary. I can't believe Passner called the timeout 4-0 a minute and a half into the game. Yeah, I think Passner recognized pretty early on that this was going to go south, and he tried to save it from going south, and he couldn't. New Mexico is just a really well coached team, and UNLV wasn't on its A game. I think there was a really kind of deflating feel, especially early on. And this isn't an excuse by any means, but especially early on when Tyron Jones went out with a shoulder injury. I don't know how serious Tyron's injury is. I don't know if anybody's asked about that in the post game. I just, I sprint home to try and get these live streams started. I don't know how hurt Tyron is, but he was in a sling on the bench. And Tyron had been at times UNLV's best player. Brian, I build back the program to what it already. Okay. So I guess I actually really like Brian's a good dude. He and I have had our fair share of disagreements here, but I put out a tweet a little bit ago, and I want to tell you why exactly I find this Coach Passner situation, because it's impossible to even, like, what am I supposed to talk about with X's and O's with this game? I guess let's just take a look at the stats just so you guys understand how bad this game was. UNLV obviously loses by 28, 29. Howie Fleming, I mean, UNLV didn't have a single player scored double digits in this game. Howie Fleming had 7. Emmanuel Steffen had 7. Emmanuel Steffen could not finish at the rim to save his life. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn had 8. I mean, he couldn't do anything right. He couldn't. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn had a brutal game, foul trouble. He was frustrated. Kamani Hamilton basically gave up on the game. Started just committing dumb fouls so he could foul out. It seemed like he was just committing dumb fouls so he could foul out and not be on the floor anymore. Isaac Williamson had, none of the Rebels had above a 40 offensive rating. Had above a 1. I guess Nas Cunningham did. Had above a 100 offensive rating in this game. I don't even know what to say. This is one of the worst statistical performances I've ever seen from a team. I guess if you want to give UNLV some credit, they were 13 of 17 from the free throw line, 76%. That's passable. They shoot 43% inside the 3-point line and a paltry 22% from outside the line. UNLV is out rebounded by 10, 31 to 41. UNLV had 13 assists on 16 turnovers, most of which happened earlier on in the game. And the turnovers lessened as the game turned into garbage time. But if the game had kept going at the pace it was going at, UNLV could have had easily 20, 25 turnovers. UNLV finishes with 5 blocks, 6 steals, 16 personal fouls. Just a pathetic performance overall from the Runnin' Rebels. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about why I find this situation so frustrating. And Brian, I don't mean to single you out because, again, I think Brian's a good guy. My point is, and why I find this year probably more frustrating than maybe other people do, is that UNLV had a coach, Kevin Kruger, for the last 4 years. And Kevin, I wanted him gone. I started the podcast to get him fired. That's why this podcast exists. The Southern loss happened, and it lit a fire under me saying, we got to fire this guy. This guy sucks. And so that's why the Let's Run podcast is what it is, because I didn't think Kevin was good for the program. And Kevin, I guess I can actually pull this up. It might help. And I'm going to take your comment off the screen because I don't want to single anybody. I think Brian's a really good dude. Let's look at the program under Kevin Kruger. Just to show you, just to help you guys make my point here. So Kevin Kruger takes over the Runnin' Rebels in the 2022-2023 season. UNLV in that season goes 18-14. I believe they finished 6th in the Mountain West Conference or 5th in the Mountain West Conference, I believe. They had some good wins. They had wins, away at Fresno State. They obviously they swept a Colorado State team that was pretty good and then destroyed them. They swept Reno that year. They had some disappointing losses too, but 18 wins, it's not a great first year, but UNLV as an offense was the 87th ranked offense and the 97th ranked defense in the country. That's Kevin Kruger's first year. Kevin Kruger's second year, they go 19-13, including a 10-0 start. They had some injuries, and obviously the season derailed. They did pretty bad in Mountain West play that year, ultimately, and the only going 7 for 11 in conference play. Highlighted some pretty rough losses. They lost to basically every good team they played at home, including a brutal couple, a Fresno State and San Jose State loss at home. But they still had 19 wins. And they did start 10-0. That kind of, with a nice win over Dayton on their home court, and a tough win at New Mexico. And I believe New Mexico was ranked at that time. So UNLV wins 19 games in Kevin's second year. Kevin's third year, they actually win 21 games, despite a horrific start to the season with losses to Southern, Loyola Marymount, and then eventually, like I mentioned, that awful loss to Air Force at home, where they lost 90-58 to the 264th ranked team in the country. UNLV ends up finishing that season tied for second in the conference, and wins 21 games and wins 2 games in the NIT. So there you go. Then in Kevin's final year, they go 18-15. Obviously, they didn't really lose that many their only really awful, horrific loss was to Wyoming at home, where Wyoming was not a great team that year, but they lose to Wyoming at home. But they win 18 games, and Kevin's fired because 18-20 wins is not good enough. The program was nowhere near an NCAA tournament, and this program for the last 4 years has been a good bet to win 18-24 games. Sorry, 18-20 games. And win some good games in conference play, lose some frustrating games. But that's what this program's been. It wasn't good enough. Everybody, I feel like most people agreed, there was some dissent. Most people agreed that 18-20 wins was not good enough and that Kevin Kruger needed to be fired. So who do we bring in? When we fired Kevin Kruger, the school lied about Kevin's contract situation. They had secretly extended Kevin under the table a few years earlier, had never had the guts to tell the public or even a lot of the donor base about Kevin Kruger's extension. And the school lights $3 million on fire of donor money to fire Kevin Kruger, essentially handicapping themselves a little bit. $3 million is a lot of money. You know what you could buy with $3 million? Probably the best roster in the Mountain West, or at least one of the best rosters in the Mountain West. And UNLV lights $3 million on fire because 18-20 wins was not good enough. That's what UNLV did. They light $3 million on fire because 18-20 wins was not enough. And then during the coaching search, I had been told, and I wasn't the only one that was told this. And there had been some rumors going around, and I don't know, I don't think that this ever got that far, but that New Mexico's coach, the guy that just walked into the Thomas and Mack and coached a team that put a smackdown on the Rebels, that there was serious interest between Eric Olin and UNLV to be UNLV's next head coach. I don't know how true that is. I was told that it was true. I don't know. I was obviously wrong. I think that Eric Olin would have been a slam dunk hire. It would have been amazing. I think we would be kind of what New Mexico is this year. Maybe not, obviously not the exact same. No two situations are the same. UNLV ends up getting roped in with Brian Hodgson, who ends up being the head coach at USF. And they made, in my mind, what was a budget hire. I hated the Josh Passner hire. Generally, and I know that Josh Passner wasn't technically fired by Memphis, but Memphis paid quite a bit of money. I believe it was like $2 million to Georgia Tech to have Josh Passner not be the head coach at Memphis anymore. He kind of outstayed his welcome. Then he gets fired at Georgia Tech, and there were reasons why Josh Passner was let go at these two places. And again, I know he wasn't technically fired at Memphis, but he was pushed out the door. We hired a guy that had been pushed out the door by his previous two schools, and who, in my opinion, is an erratic coach. And look, I really like Josh, but Josh right now, if in case you're unaware, and some of this is because of an offset of Georgia Tech, but Josh is the lowest paid coach in the Mountain West. I think the only coach who might be around him is Joe Scott, or sorry, the head coach at Air Force, who I don't even think is the head coach anymore because he apparently was abusing his players. But Josh Passner is being paid $500,000 this year to be our head coach by UNLV. And I think he's a budget hire who is a really good talker. Some people have described him as kind of a used car salesman, a guy that talks a million miles a minute, is trying to tell you everything you want to hear. And I think Josh is genuine about it because, when you hear used car salesman, you think, oh, maybe they're trying to jip me out. I think Josh is actually really genuine about this. He has all the right intentions. He's working really hard. It's not a work ethic thing. He's giving it his all. I just think that, and look, I'm not advocating for Josh Passner to be fired. at the end of the season. I'm not. He's not going to get fired. You don't hire a coach and then 1 year later fire them. You just don't do that. The earliest you fire a coach is after 2 years, and I don't even think that'll be the case. Even if Josh Passner wins 18 games and returns UNLV to the level it was under the last 4 years of Kevin Kruger, I don't think that will be enough to fire Coach Josh Passner. But he had a lot of 18, 17 win seasons, and I think coaching for me is a talent thing. It's kind of like the comparison, and the reason why I don't think Josh is a good hire, even though I'm not advocating for Josh to lose his job. I'm still supporting him. I'm still going to be going to all the games. I'm still going to be having live streams after every single game. The comparison for me with coaching is kind of like singing. Now, there are things that you can do to become a better singer. You can practice. You can do exercises. You can work on your vocal range. And if you're a good singer, there are things that you can do to practice to become a great singer. But there still is, even if you practice, even if you spend thousands of hours practicing, if you don't have a natural talent to sing, you can't sing. And I don't know that Josh Passner has that natural talent as a coach. And despite the fact that he's a madman, that he works really hard, that he says all the right things, that he knows conceptually what his teams have to do, despite the fact that he does all that, I just don't know that he's a talented enough coach. And I think coaching, there's a talent to it. They called Phil Jackson the Zen master for a reason. Knowledge isn't enough. Practice isn't enough. Hours spent studying film isn't enough. All of the media appearances and rah and the tough and gritness motto that Coach Passner is trying to sell, all of that is not sufficient on its own. Josh Passner could be the hardest working coach in college basketball, but that doesn't mean he's going to be successful at UNLV. And my opinion about him is that he just doesn't quite have the juice. And I don't think Kevin Kruger had the juice either, so and I want to again reiterate, I'm not calling for his job, but nobody's going to fire this guy. He's working as hard as he can. He's genuine about his desire to bring UNLV back to where it needs to be. He's trying to mend bridges with the fan base. He's giving it his all. And he's a good guy, man. Josh Passner is one of the few people on planet Earth that you can genuinely say is just a great person. But I don't think he's talented enough. I don't know that he has the juice. And I also want to say, I could still be wrong. I mean, this win and the way that this season has gone, I mean, there's been injuries. There have been things that have gotten in the way of Coach Passner being successful. But I can't help shake that sneaking suspicion that he's not the guy, that he's just not the guy. I don't believe in him. And even though I want him to be great, and even though I want to believe in him, and sometimes wanting to believe in somebody is enough support. But I can't shake that feeling that he's just not the guy for us. And look, I could totally be wrong, guys. I could totally be wrong about Coach Passner. And maybe I am. And look, I also don't think the school has done everything like Vinny says. The school could have given Josh the opportunity to have 2 more scholarship spots that this team could badly use on another guard. This team just doesn't have a point guard. And yeah, I totally agree, Vinny, that he has suffered injuries, but the things that Josh Passner preaches all the time, the tough and the gritness and the fight and the playing every possession like it's your last, those things aren't talent oriented, aren't even available player oriented. That's something, that tough, that gritness, that fight is something that even if your team is injured, even if your team is not being properly supported by the school, that is something that your team should be able to prove nearly every night of the season. And yet so many times this year, whether it be losing that opening night game to UT Martin, whether it be giving up 103 points to Montana at home, whether it be losing by 35 on the road at Wyoming, a program and school that's Wyoming's only really great win. I mean, like, whether it be tonight, showing up and just completely flat and embarrassing. And I've just seen too many times this year where things that are in the team's control, injuries not always in the team's control, obviously. shooting luck, shooting variance. You're not always going to shoot the ball well. And but Josh Passner has told us that the way that you judge him as a coach is whether his team plays with toughness, with grittiness and toughness. And his team just hasn't done that consistently. And so I don't think he's done a good job this year. I mean, I'm not blaming Josh Passner for losing to Alabama, for getting blown out to Alabama. Fair enough, man. I'm not blaming him for losing to San Diego State on Saturday. That San Diego State team's awesome. They played well. I'm not even blaming him for losing to New Mexico tonight. New Mexico's really stinking good. And Eric Olin, I think, is the best coach in the Mountain West. That's my opinion. If I think that highly of him as an X's and O's coach, and just as a guy that motivates dudes to play hard defense. I'm not blaming him for those losses. I will blame him for losing to Tennessee State. That's unacceptable. I will blame him for losing their opening night game to UT Martin. I don't care that UT Martin's 15-4. I don't care that you were suffering from injuries. There are losses that you can't have. I'll blame him for losing to Montana, giving 103 points to Montana. I even thought in the Players Era tournament, that those are probably the most excusable losses because UNLV just didn't have any size in those games. But it's just too many. Yes, you went on the road and you beat Utah State and Logan. Again, you didn't win any big games at home. You went on the road and you beat Stanford. I mean, those are good wins. But if the level of toughness and grittiness varies so much from game to game, I don't know. And that's how you've told us to judge you as a coach. Then I don't know what to say. Kamani Hamilton and Emmanuel Steffen make the dumbest fouls I've ever seen as players in college basketball. More specifically, Kamani. Kamani will foul 94 feet from the basket out of frustration after bricking a shot. And this has been happening all season. And it's a recurring issue. And Josh hasn't been able to get his player to stop doing that. And ultimately, yes, the player is responsible for their own actions. But as a coach, the buck stops with you, man. If a player's acting stupid, it's your fault. It's your fault, especially if it's something that happens game after game after game after game. Kamani just plays dumb sometimes, man, with these fouls that he's committing, with his shot selection. And Kamani is, for all intents and purposes, supposed to be the leader of this team. I don't know this 100%, but I have heard from reliable information that Kamani is the highest compensated player NIL-wise on the team. We brought him in to be our glue guy, our number one. And our number one player, our star. And yet all year he's been making dumb decisions and decisions that he wasn't necessarily making as frequently at his previous stop when he was at High Point under I can't remember, Takayo Siddle. Is that the coach at High Point under his previous coach? And so if we're supposed to judge you by your tough, how good you are at making your team play tough and gritty, and your team doesn't consistently do that. And not only that, they just get embarrassed, embarrassed against Montana, embarrassed against Wyoming. Like, this happens too many times. And not to mention, you can't win. UNLV is 6-8 when playing within the city limits of Las Vegas. How are people supposed to trust you if game to game your effort level and your attention to detail varies so drastically? And so, again, I'm not calling for his job. I'm not. UNLV's not going to fire Josh Passner. They're not going to fire him next year either. He's going to get 3 or 4 years here. And if UNLV is going to be successful, it's going to be because Josh Passner found a way through all of his work ethic and energy to put something together, to go on a run. And there's still basketball to be played left in this season. I think this week ends the halfway point of the Mountain West Conference season. So, is there a chance that UNLV goes on a run here? I mean, I guess they're 5-4 in conference play now. This loss probably, I mean, they were never going to win the conference anyway, but UNLV is officially eliminated from any sort of Mountain West contention with this loss. You can't lose at home, especially not 2 times in a row. And look, I just have a problem when the program was a certain way under Kevin Kruger, and that wasn't good enough. And then it getting worse under you, and I get Josh Passner didn't bring back players, but like Brooklyn Hicks, our one of our guards from last year, went and played at Montana. You're telling me you couldn't have kept Brooklyn Hicks? Bear Cherry wouldn't played at Sacramento State. You're telling me you couldn't have kept Bear Cherry? I mean, I get losing DJ Thomas and Jalen Bedford and Jaden Henley, but UNLV didn't have to return only one player. And if they did, why did they choose Jacob Benarby? Like, and look, I'm not behind the details on why all of these players did what, went where they went, and if UNLV could have kept more players. And I guess I just think that this school doesn't know what to do with UNLV basketball. And frankly, I'm not sure that Josh Passner, again, I guess to talk about Josh, because habitual muffin, honestly, I think I think evaluation of coaches, how well they can recruit good players, not how well they can actually coach. I think it's both, man. It really is. And part of recruiting players is you do have to recruit the right type of players. I don't think that Alan Huss, thank you, Vinny. I appreciate that. I couldn't remember his name. I do think you have to recruit players that will play for your system, that have the right mentality and mindset to play under what you are going to do as a head coach. And Josh Pastner didn't do that. He didn't do that. And I know that, it's only 1 year, but I think you can tell a lot about a coach, even with just 1 year. Not necessarily enough where you have to fire them, but I haven't been impressed, man. I haven't been impressed. And I guess we'll see how they do. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be doing my live streams. I'm still going to be going to every game. It's not going to stop just because they aren't playing well. I I lived through Marvin Menzies' first year. The Menzies 3 years were disgraceful. Their teams were, even when they had talent, they weren't playing with consistent effort, energy, and But I'm just really discouraged. I'm really discouraged. What's the deal with Nuts Cunningham? I don't know if I already answered that. I hope he gets rotation minutes after tonight. But guys, tough night. Really tough night. And hopefully, I don't know that there are answers on this roster for Josh Passner to get this team to play consistently hard. And I don't know that Josh Passner is the type of guy that can actually get a group of young men to play consistently hard every game in and game out. I don't know that he can. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how this team does. Still going to be there. But to feel like we're worse off than we were at any point under Kevin Kruger is a tough pill to swallow. Tough. And especially when I think UNLV had a decent chance. I don't know this, but it had a decent chance to hire the guy that's coaching New Mexico right now. It stings. It stings. And most frustrating of all is I don't think Eric Harper, our athletic director, really cares. I think he views UNLV basketball as an annoyance. Just stop calling me. Stop talking to me about UNLV basketball. Let's talk about football. And when you do that, when you view something as an annoyance more so than a priority, I think you end up making some bad decisions. A couple of more comments here. They have a deep, low, and medium high. They will still win a game they shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, they might still go on the road and beat San Diego State or Boise or GCU. They might. And just disappointing year, man. Disappointing year. I had talked about having Coach Passner on my show again. And I don't know, maybe sometimes people from the program listen to the show. I don't know if any would listen tonight. And I guess I'll reach out to Coach Passner too and say a few things to him. Nothing. I'm not going to reach out to him and be like, "Oh, you suck, coach," because I don't think that's useful. And he's just as frustrated about this as we are. But I am a fan, not a media member. I don't do this professionally. I don't want sponsors on my videos. I do this purely out of love of the game. And I always want to approach things from a fan perspective, not from a professional perspective. And so if I were to talk to Coach Passner, I'd be really frustrated with him. And I'd be like, why can't your guys play with consistency, in terms of just toughness and grittiness and effort? Game in and game out, that's not always there. And I see other coaches that have just as built on the fly rosters that are getting their guys to do that. Why can't you get them to do that? And I just don't think that would be useful for me to say to him. And because I'm not like a team player. Like I'm not gonna be a yes man. And I'm certainly not going to ever be the guy that just goes along. Oh yeah, coach. I'm not going to be a cheerleader. That's not my opinion. That's not my view. That's not my role with my show. I'm never just going to be like, yes, coach. It's a tough game against New Mexico, but you guys are going to bounce back. Like that's not my show. That's not what I do on my show. And so I hope to have Coach Passner on again in the future. Again, I really like him, want him to succeed. And if UNLV basketball is going to be good in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be because of him. So I'm going to end the show there. I'm kind of rambling now, but guys, thank you so much for taking. I'm surprised we got 250 plus of you watching. I mean, after the game ended like an hour and a half ago, so to have this many people watching is a pleasure and a joy. And I hope that you will subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter, as we're going to keep covering the team throughout the season. I'm not going to stop. So you guys have a great night. Appreciate you all, and let's run.